Welcome to the Dragon Shed for this month's 3-minute skill. This is more of a technique than a skill, but same difference. There was a time when I actually made notepads, I actually hand bound them, but in terms of a return and time involved, not really worth it unless you want to really charge a lot for them. So I've gone to this option, which is making a cover, a slip cover essentially, for your books. So the measurement you need to keep in mind for an A5 book is 22 by 34, and that gets you the right width and depth to go all the way around the book essentially, with a bit of leeway. That size will get you a cover for a 300-page book. These are 250, but I think it's about right. Gives it a bit of leeway for extra movement and whatever else. So first you need to start with your outer fabric. I tend to use a thicker printed fabric or something like tartan, or something that's got some oomph to it. And then need to pick a lining fabric, which you'll most often use a very light cotton, because you don't want to add too much thickness when you're doing these. First thing you need to do is sew a seam along the top of your pockets. I will put the sizes I use on a blog post. You're free to pick your own, obviously. I tend to like having 3 pockets in the front and 2 in the back, just for variation really. So once you've seamed the tops, not seamed, you've hemmed even, the tops of your pockets, you then lay them together, and I tend to use the templates I make for this to line them all up so they all sit pretty much straight. And then sew on a piece of ribbon or some bias binding and trim off all the excess, and then fold the ribbon over and just bind the edge. You can just roll over the fabric and create a hem like that, but that does create quite a bit of thickness, which can cause the book to not close properly. So it's a pretty easy sew, and then once you've got your 2 sides done, you need to then construct the whole thing. It does take a little bit of forethought, so be prepared to, actually I'll put it on the blog in quite a bit of detail, but I'll just say you put your cover front side up, or good side up, lay your pockets down, good side down, and then I put a strip of the outside fabric along the spine just to cover that and add some extra strength. And then I use a bit of some cheap cotton just as a liner, just to cover the whole thing so that everything's contained before I pin it in and sew it on. So at least that's the technique I use. I'll give full directions on the blog post. And then turn it back through, and I tend to turn it so it's backwards, so I turn it so the lining fabric shows, or the cotton fabric shows, and then sew the end shut before I turn everything else in. Or you can turn it all through and then sew it shut. Depends on what you want to put on the end. I tend to do a closing strip and a pen loop. Come on, get on there. Right, and then when it comes to actually putting your book in, you just fold back the spine. The other one's went so fast. Can't talk and do it at the same time. Right, and just ease it over the top of the edge of the spine. Come on, ease. There you go. And then slide it down. It should be fairly tight along the width of the book, but not so tight along the length, if you get me. So then you've got plenty of movement to spare. And having this edge bound, as I said, means it sits flat and it doesn't take up too much room and stop the book from closing properly. So it closes like that. And now I'm going to stick on a press stud to match here. And what I've done with my closing loops is I've just added a little bit of elastic so that there's enough room to take up whatever you end up putting in the book. So if you're anything like me, there'll be lots and lots of bits and pieces shoved in the pockets. So that's obviously going to add width to it. So using the little bit of elastic helps to take up that extra and hold everything in. And because I've only used a very small amount, when eventually the elastic starts to perish and go funny, it's not going to affect the closure too much. If you use an elastic strap to close these, like these ones, there is a risk that when that fails, the whole thing becomes floppy. So that's why I use two. So you can bring in the second one to help, or you can sew them together so they're stabilised. So I'm just going to stick it on a press stud. And that is my book cover completed and ready to go. And I've got about 10 of those. It only took me maybe a day and a half. Well, probably not even that. The time spent is in the trimming and turning. But so that is this month's 3-minute skill, and I'll see you again next week.